kill! Must kill!
Hey everybody, this is War Boss Fitz, and you guys have decided that today we're going to go over the War Disciples. Whenever I think of Grimdark Future, this is one of the top 3 armies that come to mind. There's nothing like maniacs in power armor with chainsaw axes. Everything I'm putting on the board during the game that we have has been 3D printed. But in light of recent events, the guy who created these models is flying a bit too close to the sun. So I will not be telling you who makes these. I'm sure that you guys, if you've been watching for a while, you can get creative with the keyword searches and find them on your own. So that out of the way, Grimdark Future armies do have a lot more units, so let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to start off with the special rules. Blessing of War. This model and its unit get +1 to hit in melee. Chosen Veteran, it gets +1 to hit in melee and shooting. Dark Tactics, once per activation before attacking, pick one other friendly unit within 12, which may move by up to 6. Repair, once per activation, if within 2 inches of a model with Tough, roll 1 die. On a 2+, you may remove D3 wounds from that model. War Chant, this model and its unit get Furious. If they already had Furious, they get extra hits on unmodified rolls of 5 to 6 instead. Those are all the character rules. We're going to switch something up and go to the characters first. But let's continue on with these rules. Frenzy, it counts as having Furious and gets AP +1 when charging, and Furious means that if you roll a 6 when you charge, you automatically get another hit, so we colloquially call those exploding 6s. Mutations, when in melee, roll 1 die and apply 1 bonus to models with this rule. 1 to 3, they get Rending, or a 4 to 6, their attacks get AP +1. We're going to see that the trade-off between Frenzy and Mutations is a big factor in this army. We'll get to those when we get to the units. So on to the spells. Ha! Gotcha. We ain't got no spells here. The only spell that we have is we cast Fist. So at the top of the list, let's start off with the War Destroyer Champion. 150 points, quality 3, defensive 3. Comes stock with dual energy claws, which gives him 8 rending attacks, ambush, hero, toughness 6, and furious. We're out of the Age of Fantasy kiddie pool and we're into absolute slaughter range. Now his options, he could take War Chant, Repair, Dark Tactics, or Blessing of War. That is a common thing through all 3 of the characters in this army. They can all take those options. So we'll kind of skip over those as we go along. He could change out the energy claws for a heavy rifle, a close combat weapon, and a flamer mod to the heavy rifle. Or he could take a rapid storm rifle and a close combat weapon. In this army, I would never ever switch out the claws for a ranged weapon. That's for little babies. We punch things around here. He could replace his flamer mod with a plasma or a fusion mod, which pretty much gives him a fusion rifle or a plasma rifle strapped to his rifle. He can replace a close combat weapon, if he did take the rifle, with either a hammer, a sword, an axe, or a fist. Now normally I would take a fist, but in this case, keeping the dual energy claws, giving him twice the number of attacks, is what we want. So what you could do with this guy is you can put him with your other destroyers to increase the lethality of that squad through the different squad upgrades, or this guy seems just good enough, and he has his own ambush rule, that it would not be outside the question of having him running on his own to be able to ambush into the enemy army. He's got a small footprint. He's only 150 points. He could pop up somewhere where the enemy doesn't expect him and charge into combat, and then he becomes a real problem for the enemy. And if you choose that instead of any other upgrade, I would give him the Chosen Veteran so that he would hit on a 2 natively. And then with the dual claws, anything short of other 3+ defense enemies, he is pretty much going to force them to take a morale test because he's not going to lose that combat. He has the real ability to not only kill the enemy, but completely disrupt the entire back line if he's on his own. Next, we're going to go to the War Champion. This guy is going to be your quintessential power armored squad upgrade guy. He comes stock at 70 points, quality 3, defensive 3, 1 attack with a close combat weapon, and a champion heavy rifle for 2 shots at 24 inches at AP 1, hero, toughness 3, and furious. He can take all the different squad upgrades. You can switch out the heavy rifle for a heavy pistol and a close combat weapon, or dual energy claws, or a heavy cleaver. Depending on the squad you're running with, it would be a choice between the energy claws or the cleaver. You can replace his heavy pistol with all kinds of other ranged weapons, but again, we're not looking at ranged weapons around here. You can replace the close combat weapon with a hammer, a sword, an axe, or a fist. You can give him a jetpack, which means on a smaller scale, he can do the same thing the Destroyer champ will be able to do, drop in and charge into the enemy's back line. You can give him a bike, which I don't know about bikes. We'll talk about those when we get to them. And you can also give him the Chosen Veteran upgrade for 20 points, meaning that he would also hit natively on a 2. So this guy is going to be your heavily armored jack of all trades kind of character. You could put him in a unit to take their Furious rules and make him explode on a 5 or 6. You can get +1 to hit with this guy, or you can even have one of them in each squad that pair off of each other that let your units on foot move further up the board. This whole army is going to be about close combat and speed. Then our last character is the Cultist Champion. Quality 5, defensive 5 for 30 points. Comes with a close combat weapon with 1 attack and a champion rifle with 2 shots at 24 inches. Hero, toughness 3, and furious. So we're just going down the scale of characters are getting a little bit worse and worse. The points are coming down, but this guy can also take all the same squad upgrades. So if you're in a pinch when it comes to points, you can bury this guy in a squad of power armored bodies to give them all the same benefits that they would get from a war champion at half the cost. With his quality 5 and his defensive 5, I wouldn't even worry about any other upgrade. He's not going to pull his weight in a squad. Take him pretty much as just like a marker that gives out upgrades. So now on to the units. We're going to start off with the War Cultists. 10 of them for 125 points, quality 5, defensive 5, 1 attack apiece in melee, and they have rifles for 1 attack at 24 inches, and they are all furious. You can replace the rifle and the close combat weapons with a pistol and an additional attack with a close combat weapon, and you can replace 2 rifles with a shotgun, plasma rifle, shred rifle, grenade launcher, flamer, machine gun, or sniper rifle. Now, in the other versions of the War Disciples, I would say take these guys, keep them cheap, have them sit on home objectives, pop out to harass whoever comes by with their rifles. But in the War Disciples army, they do get furious, which means these guys are cheap, and if you replace all their rifles with pistols and close combat weapons, fully half of their hits are going to explode. And if you really wanted to, you could put a cultist with the upgrade on there to make it explode on a 5 or 6. That might be a little bit overboard, but these are going to be your cheap bodies to throw at the enemy, stand in their way, take shots, put these guys into a meat grinder, hold down the enemies that have the big AP weapons. But with the Furious, give them the close combat weapons and push them forward. Next, we're on to the War Brothers. 5 of them for 145 points, quality 3, defensive 3, 1 attack apiece with their close combat weapons, and they all have heavy rifles for 1 shot at 24 inches with AP1, and they all come with Furious. For upgrades, you can take one of the heavy rifles out of there and pretty much promote the guy to a sergeant, giving him a sergeant heavy pistol, and you can upgrade that pistol to a plasma pistol, and then you can upgrade the sergeant's weapons. But what you would want to do in this army is the next one to replace any heavy rifles with heavy pistols and an additional attack with a close combat weapon. Because you're a War Disciple, you want to get into the enemy and punch them in the mouth. But a better way to punch them in the mouth is going to be our next unit. War Berserkers, 5 of them for 170 points, quality 3, defensive 3. They're all armed with heavy pistols for 1 shot at 12 inches at AP1, and they all come with 2 close combat weapon attacks. They are fearless and have frenzy. Now, these are a very, very focused squad on what they want to do, so all you can really do is you replace 2 pistols with plasma pistols, or you can replace any of the close combat weapons with energy swords that gives them AP1 and rending. For 10 points apiece, that's a bit pricey, but when you remember Frenzy's there, that means whenever they charge, that's going to be AP2 with rending. Still, it's a little bit overkill for these guys. But this is going to be what you want to take in the War Disciples army. There's a good reason that this is what the army is known for: lunatics with chain axes. Load these up in APCs and drive at the enemy, but what would you say if I told you that there was a better option? Mutated War Brothers, 5 of them for 135 points, quality 3, defensive 3. They all are armed with dual claws, so they start off with 2 close combat weapon attacks, fast, mutations, and furious. Now the only upgrade you can give them is wings to give them ambush and flying. Let's not worry about that. What these guys are fast berserkers. I know it doesn't really look like it right off of the rip, but the trade-off you get between the frenzy rule and the mutations rule, 50-50 shot with the mutations rule, you're going to get the same rules that you got with frenzy, AP1. Or worst case, which is the other 50-50 shot, all of your attacks are going to have rending. These guys are going to be able to get up the board a lot faster than the berserkers, and they're not going to have to pay the APC tax to do it. Now there's some other things you can do playing around with the APC that we'll get to when we get there, but these guys, I have a feeling, are going to operate at about the same efficiency as the berserkers for 35 points less per 5. So if you take a squad of 10, that's 70 points cheaper than a berserker squad. With the berserkers, you get the pistols, but the berserkers, when are they ever going to shoot their pistols? It's ABC, man, ABC. Always be charging. The next unit we're going to come to is the War Talon Raptors, 5 of them for 150 points, quality 3, defensive 3. They all are equipped with dual energy claws for 2 attacks apiece with rending, ambush, furious, and flying. You can replace all of the claws with heavy pistols and close combat weapons. There's the chosen veteran option, but I kind of skip over that for these squads because while it is good to have everybody hit on it too, I feel it's a bit pricey. So we're going to skip over that, but it is an option for a lot of these units. Sometimes I just straight up don't see it. For some reason, my vision goes blind to that option because I've never taken it myself. If you do swap out the claws to the heavy pistol loadout, you can replace one of those pistols with a plasma pistol, flamer, plasma rifle, or fusion rifle. In a War Disciples army, your enemy is going to be trying to focus to stop everything coming at their front lines. A small squad of these guys would be good to jump into the back lines to be able to cause havoc back there. Again, just like we've had with other ambushing stuff in the army, everyone's going to be focused on your berserkers up front. These guys can just sneak in the back. War Support, 3 of them for 210 points, quality 3, defensive 3, 1 attack apiece with their close combat weapons, and they're all armed with heavy machine guns, 3 attacks at 30 inches with AP1, relentless and furious. Yes, even though this army is focused on punching stuff in the mouth, having some heavy weapons on the board is useful. Especially if you're fighting against an army that has their own units of APCs. These guys are going to be there to break apart that crunchy interior and let all the squishy stuff fall out. So with that in mind, what I would do to this unit is I would upgrade everybody to laser cannons because it is their job to pop enemy tanks, enemy walkers, enemy APCs, stuff that the chain axes are going to have a hard time dealing with. Our next unit is the Greater War Mutated, 3 of them for 220 points, quality 3, defensive 3. Each comes with dual heavy claws for 4 attacks, fast, mutations, toughness 3, and furious, and they have no upgrades. These guys are just like the other mutated unit. These would just be fast, beefy berserkers running across the field. They have a smaller footprint than a regular mutated squad, and their one goal in life is to charge as fast as possible into the enemy. And then once they're there, they're going to be like ticks. It's going to be a lot of blood and a whole lot of effort to pull them out. Next unit is the War Destroyers, 3 of them for 215 points, quality 3, defensive 3. They each come with dual energy claws, 4 attacks apiece with rending, ambush, toughness 3, and furious. You can replace the dual energy claws with storm rifles and close combat weapons. You can replace the storm rifle with a heavy rifle with a flamer mod, and that flamer mod you can swap out for a plasma or a fusion mod. You can replace one storm rifle with a heavy flamer and a reaper cannon, and you can replace any close combat weapon with an energy hammer, axe, sword, or fist. My suggestion is to keep these guys pretty much stocked to jump in there with the 4 attacks apiece with rending. Attach a character to a squad of 6 of these guys. The look of sheer terror in your opponent's face when 7 destroyers drop down, 6 of these guys and the leader, is just priceless. They are going to walk into the enemy and rip and tear until there is nothing left. This is one of those units that every time I make an army that is in this style, I have to take a unit of destroyers. It's like against my religion not to. They're so much fun, and the sheer amount of damage they can cause is worth it every time. Next unit up is the Mutated War Destroyer, 145 points. He's a single model unit, quality 3, defensive 3, dual mutated claws, 6 attacks, AP 1, ambush, mutations, toughness 6, and furious. You can change out the mutated claws for 1 mutated claw and a mutated gun to give him a ranged attack. But again, in the War Disciples army, I would never do that, keep him with his dual mutated claws. This guy works in the same principle as that single Destroyer Lord does. A single unit dropping down to charge into the enemy, and with the mutations, again, it's a 50-50 shot. He's either going to be AP 2 or he's going to be AP 1 with rending. And with defensive 3, with toughness of 6, he's going to be hard to take care of. They're going to have to dedicate some stuff to take this guy out. So the last unit of troops would be the War Bikers. 3 of them for 265 points, quality 3, defensive 3. They each come with twin heavy rifles for 2 shots at AP 1 at 24 inches. 3 heavy pistols for 1 shot at 12 inches at AP 1. And they each come with a close combat weapon for 2 attacks apiece. Fast, toughness 3, and furious. You could swap out one of the pistols to a sergeant pistol and make him the sergeant of the squad. You could change that pistol to a plasma pistol. You could then upgrade his close combat weapon to a sword or a fist. You would replace all the pistols with an additional heavy rifle that would give them 3 shots apiece at AP1. And one of those rifles you could swap out for a flamer, plasma rifle, and fusion rifle. Normally I love bikers just because they're a fun unit, but in this army in particular, this is not a unit that I would take. You got other fast options with the Mutated Brothers and the Greater Mutated Brothers. The Greater Mutated Brothers pretty much service the same purpose because they're going to be fast, furious, tough units. If you really want mobile anti-infantry fire, I could see taking these guys in case you're trying to chase down a fast enemy that you're just not going to catch on foot. I could see it. But I am petitioning OPR right now. 1-page rules. In the War Disciples unit of bikers, put an option in there to rip out all of the ranged attacks, all the rifles. Put in more close combat attacks. There's a particular conversion that I've always done whenever I run a army in this style that I think would fit perfectly into the flavor of this army. So just throwing that out there, I'm not going to take the bikers, but if this was an option, oh, you better believe I'd take this. Moving on. Into our vehicles, the War APC, quality 3, defensive 2, that comes with a storm rifle, 3 shots at 24 inches at AP1. Fast, impact 6, toughness 6, transport 11. You can give it an additional heavy rifle with a flamer mod. You can give it a storm rifle or a havoc missile launcher. You can replace the flamer mod with a fusion mod or a plasma mod. And you can upgrade it with a spiked ram or dozer blades. Normally, I like keeping the APCs cheap. But again, War Disciples, we're being fluffy, flavorful, and it works on the table. What this guy's going to do, this is going to be the way your berserkers get to war. They all pile into the APC moves forward, and yes, in OPR, the berserkers can charge out of an APC. Anybody can charge out of an APC, but you have to do all of that charging within 6 inches. So you don't get your 12-inch charge, you just get to activate within 6 inches of that APC. So that's going to be a way for your troops to jump out, cause more damage a little further up the board. Now, what I would do with the APCs here is I would give them the spiked ram and the dozer blade. Dozer blade because with the Strider, you're just trying to get across the board as fast as possible. Strider's going to make that happen. And then the spiked ram is for after you drop off the berserkers. Use this guy like a guided missile to ram into the enemy. He's going to get 8 impact hits. He's not going to get any attacks in close combat in case someone charges him, but you got defensive 2, your toughness 6, you might weather the storm. But this is just going to be one of those, once it does its primary purpose of dropping off the berserkers, this guy just tries to turn everything into a speed bump. War Tank, quality 3, defensive 2, twin heavy machine guns for 6 shots at 30 inches, AP1, demolition cannon, 1 shot at 24 inches, AP4, blast 6, and indirect, fast, impact 6, and toughness 12. You can replace the demolition cannon with twin laser cannons or rapid autocannon. And you can replace the twin heavy machine guns with twin laser cannons. You can give it a heavy rifle with a flamer mod. storm rifle or a havoc missile, and then you can swap out the flamer mod for fusion or plasma, and you can give it a spiked ram and a dozer blade. Now, my personal thoughts on this army. You've definitely got the anti-infantry killing with all of your troops. You're not going to need more of that. So the purpose of the tank in this army would to be fight enemy armor. And for that in this army, I would rather take a support squad because they're going to be cheaper. Just mainly because it's going to be cheaper and allow you to spend more points on your idiots with chain axes. 3 support guys are less durable because they only have 3 toughness between all 3 of them. And a defense of 3 instead of 2. But this is one of those cases of I think your enemy's going to be occupied with other stuff and not shoot your support unless they're really going to dedicate to it. But your mileage may vary. I love tanks, but just not in a War Disciples army. War Heavy Tank, 820 points, quality 3, defensive 2, quad laser cannon, 4 shots, 36 inches, AP 3, deadly 3, twin heavy machine gun, 6 shots at 30 inches at AP 1, fast impact 6, toughness 18, and transport 11. You can give it a heavy rifle and a flamer, a storm rifle, havoc missile, all the usual upgrades for our vehicles. Now, I love the brick, and these guys are bricks. What I think is this guy is too many points for what it is in 2,000 points. Against some armies, it's great, like if there were Titan Lords and it could use its quad laser cannons to its fullest to do the most work there. But against some other armies that are going to be running primarily single wound models, it's not going to be efficient at all. At higher point value where you're going to see super heavy things, yeah, that means this tank is going to be a staple. Just with its quad laser cannons alone, it becomes a big asset whenever you're fighting against super heavy tanks or other Titan Lords and stuff like that. But at 2,000 points, this guy's taking almost half of those points by itself. Leave it on the shelf until you get to a lot higher point value. Infernal Brute, 310 points, quality 3, defensive 2, 4 attacks to AP 1 with a stomp, 2 attacks, blast 3 with 2 brute hammers, so that becomes 4 attacks at blast 3, fear 2, toughness 12, and furious. You can replace one of the hammers with a missile array. You can replace one hammer with a super heavy fusion rifle, twin heavy machine guns, heavy reaper cannon, heavy plasma cannon, twin laser cannon. You can replace any of the brute hammers with a flail, an axe, or a fist, and if you take the fist, you can give it a heavy flamer or a storm rifle built in. Now again, in the War Disciples army, you want this guy built for close combat. So my suggestion is going to be either the axe or the fist. The axe in case you're going up against heavier stuff, and the fist just for all-around beatdowns. Given the thing 8 attacks at AP4 usually means that whatever you hit is going to go right through. Now also, if you take the fists, what I like to do in that situation is to go ahead and upgrade it with at least one of the heavy flamers. In that case, in case some other lunatic charges you, instead of having to charge the enemy and fight only hitting on a 6 because you're fatigued, you could look at him with a heavy flamer and hit him on a 2. That's a whole lot more valuable, just having that option in your back pocket. War Fiend, 400 points, quality 3, defensive 2, 8 attacks at AP1 with its tail, 4 attacks rending with its claws, 4 attacks at AP1 with its stomp, fear 2, regeneration, toughness 12, and furious. You can replace its steel tail with dual maul cutters, 6 attacks at AP3, or you can also replace its tail and its claws for twin fiend autocannons or twin ecto cannons. Now again, in any other army, the autocannon and the ecto cannon might be an option, but not in this army. Not at all. We're going and fighting stuff. This puppy wants hugs, and it's a big puppy. So what you're going to want to do, the only option you really have here is to swap between the tail or the cutter. It's a question of, do you want more attacks or do you want higher AP? It's up to you. These guys are great fun to run. Kind of use them like the Infernal Brutes. Just charge them at the enemy. Again, that's the whole tactic with the whole army. I just keep saying every time I talk about something here. Just charge the enemy. That's your one tactic. Wherever you set up, arrow pointing at the other deployment zone, go there. The Crab Walker, 765 points, quality 3, defensive 2. That's a lot of guns. Battle Cannon, 2 shots at 30 inches with AP2 and Blast 3. A Reaper Cannon, 4 shots at 24 inches at AP1. Crab Flail for 8 attacks. Crab Fist for 4 attacks at AP3. And Stomp for 6 attacks at AP2. Fear 3, Regeneration, Toughness 18, and Furious. You can replace the Reaper Cannon and give it a Twin Heavy Machine Gun or a Twin Laser Cannon. And you can replace the Flail and give it a Twin Heavy Flamer or a Havoc Missile. Now this is falling into the same category that the Heavy Tank is. That's a whole lot of points for a 2,000 point game. And it's falling into that weird in-between where it's got good shooting and it's got good melee at the same time, and it's paying for both. I mean, you can replace the Reaper Cannon and the Flail. You could pretty much strip all of its close combat off of it to give it more guns, but I don't know if that would be worth it in any of the other Havoc Disciples army, let alone the War Disciples army. If I had an option to rip the Battle Cannon and the Reaper Cannon off of it and give it more close combat weapons, then maybe there'd be some play there, but not at 2,000 points. We're not going to take this guy. Last unit we are looking at is the War Dragon, 240 points, quality 3, defensive 2. It comes with a Forge Flamethrower, 2 shots at 18 inches, AP1, Blast 3, and Reliable. Aircraft, Regeneration, and Toughness 6. You can replace the Flamethrower for a Forge Cannon for 30-inch range, 8 attacks at AP3, for another whopping 115 points. Now personally, I am not a fan of aircraft in the game. Just the way their rules interact with the rest of the stuff on the board, you're only really going to be able to have them on the board for 2 turns. I know why it's in the rules for OPR, because a lot of people have these aircraft that they want to use, but I just never really saw it. I think it's a level above the scale that we're playing out on the board. But with that in mind, being able to pretty much put the weapons where you want on the board when it does come in, Flamethrower against softer, squishier targets, Forge Cannon against everything else. You're going to hit on a 3 or a 2 with the Flamethrower. So if you want an aircraft, I mean, this isn't the worst choice. So that brings us to the end of the War Disciples roster. So coming up, we're going to show you what I made for models for the Army of the Week this week, and we're going to play a battle where we're going to have our War Disciples play Lumberjacks and try to chop the Tree Lords down to size. Now, who's ready to rip and tear? Here is the army we're hitting the board with today, the War Disciples. In the army, we have 2 squads of 10 cultists, all armed with close combat weapons. 2 squads of 10 mutated brothers. Again, all armed with close combat weapons, no shooting weapons. Their mutation rule is going to be what they hinge on. 3 support disciples. All 3 of them are carrying the heavy laser cannon to take out our very heavy targets. 1 destroyer champion and destroyers, again, armed with nothing but the dual close combat weapons. They're going to hit the board and try to shred whatever they touch. And 1 infernal brute, armed with 2 brute fists and 2 heavy flamers. He's going to march up the board, and I have no way to stop him. Their opponents today are the Tree Lords. You've seen them on this channel before, but we have had to make some changes to add an additional 500 points to make this a 2,000 point game. 1 of the brute squads has lost its Revenant Elder, but then we have another Revenant Elder that has taken the upgrade to become a beast on its own, giving it defensive 3, 9 wounds, 4 rending attacks, and 4 attacks at AP2. And the next additions are 2 squads of 3 Bug Riders. They're going to be able to run around the board and get advantageous charges with their lances wherever they can. Today's mission, we're set up on the jungle board. We have 6 objectives on the table, and we're going to be using the mission cards again because it's been working out so well so far. We're using 1 deck. Each army gets 5 cards. They're only allowed to score 1 per turn, and they're allowed to discard 1 per turn. The War Disciples are set up entirely to run as fast as they can up the board to get their chainsaws onto those trees, with their support guys hiding in some cover, hoping that some large targets will come their way. The Tree Lords have set up heavy on the left flank, with the right flank only having the giant and 1 of the squads of Bug Riders. First activation of the game, the Infernal Brute moves forward.
Why aren't we killing yet? I hunger again.
Places himself on objective number 2. The 6 brutes move forward into the building in the center of the board. The first unit of Mutated Brothers moves forward onto objective 2.
For the slaughter!
Making sure to stay outside of charge range of the enemy. They're the ones that want to charge, not the other way around. The unit of Bug Riders on the right flank moves forward. The second unit of Mutated Brothers moves towards objective number 5, making sure to stay outside of charge range of the brutes in the center of the board. The second unit of Bug Riders flies sideways to go land on top of objective number 3, taking over the holding responsibility from the Dryad creature, allowing it free reign to move out and attack whatever it wants. Not needing to move because they're already on a card objective, the cultist unit on the right flank holds. Crashing through the bushes, the Revenant takes off towards objective 2. Not quite able to make it into combat, it has showed up to make sure the disciples know they're going to have to fight for objective 2. Seeing it as a way to prove themselves, the cultists eagerly charge towards the Revenant.
Faster, if you know what's good for you!
The unit of hunters move forward to get line of sight and then fire their heavy bows at the unit of Mutated Brothers. The large arrows are able to take out one of the Mutated Brothers. Blood is now on the field, and the War Disciples can smell it.
Blood! 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 Blood!
Support Brothers heft their heavy laser cannons and see the unit of Bug Riders over top of the underbrush. They fire their heavy beams. All 3 shots connecting. Instantly, the Bug Riders are engulfed in flames, and they crash to the ground. These are weapons the Tree Lords have never experienced before, and a feeling of what could be called fear grips the giant tree's hearts. Second unit of Hunter fires into the unit of Mutated Brothers on objective number 2. They're able to take out 3 of the power armored warriors. The tree giant moves forward. After witnessing the destruction of the Bug Riders, he casts Spirit Vine onto the Mutated Brothers. The spell goes off. That forces the Mutated Brothers to be -1 to hit in melee the next time they attack. The Tree Lords are able to score 2 victory points for hold 3, and the War Disciples are able to score 1 victory point for seize 4. New cards are drawn. The Tree Lords get hold the line, and the War Disciples get delve deep. For discards, the Tree Lords discard Executioner and pick up Area Dominance. The War Disciples discard Total Dominance and pick up Volley Fire. On turn 2, the ambushers show up, both inside the enemy's deployment zone. The large unit of brutes showing up on objective number 1, and the unit of War Disciple destroyers materializing behind the unit of hunters. The War Disciples activate first, and seeing the large unit of brutes within charge range, the unit of cultists that was so gung-ho last turn double back, charge into the brutes on objective number 1.
Attack! Crack them in half!
The cultists are able to do 7 wounds to the brutes. The brutes attack back and are also able to cause 7 wounds to the cultists. Melee is a tie, no tests need to be made. Objective 1 is contested. The hunters move away from the destroyers, turn around and fire their heavy bows. In a run of bad rolling, they're able to kill 1 destroyer and put 2 wounds on another.
I will have my vengeance.
The Infernal Brute charges into the Dryad Horror.
Must kill! Must kill!
With the Malice skill making it hard to hit, the Infernal Brute is only able to put 4 wounds onto the Dryad Horror. The Dryad Horror attacks back. It's able to put 2 wounds onto the Infernal Brute, but the Infernal Brute definitely won combat. And the Dryad Horror fails its morale test, meaning that it takes off running. Using their Strider rule to ignore the difficult terrain, the second squad of brutes charges into the mutated brothers around objective number 2. Unbelievably, the brutes are able to put 8 wounds onto the mutated brother squad. Since there are only 7 left, the brutes wipe out the mutated brothers. On the other flank, the unit of mutated brothers charges into the tree giants, trying to use their chain axes to bring the big tree down.
The enemy, finally!
The big tree is rocked in close combat, loses 10 wounds, meaning he has 2 remaining. The tree giant attacks back. The tree giant is only able to pierce the power armor once in its attacks back. The tree giant definitely lost combat and proceeds to fail his morale test, so he breaks apart and leaves the board. The unit of hunters fires at the infernal brute on objective number 2. They're able to ping 3 wounds off of its armored hide. Seeing as they're not needed on objective number 4, the unit of cultists take off towards the center of the board so that they can contribute to this battle. The last remaining unit of bug riders charge into the infernal brute. Their leafy feathers flapping in the wind. They're able to do 3 wounds to the armored hide of the infernal brute. The infernal brute attacks back, doing 5 wounds to the bug riders. The bug riders lose combat but are able to pass their morale test. The destroyers, moving faster than anything that heavy should be able to, move flat out towards the unit of hunters that shot at them this turn.
Got them! Got them all!
Last activation for the tree men this turn, the brutes on objective number 1 charge back into the cultists. Even only hitting on 6s, their furious rule, means that they're able to cause enough damage to completely wipe the cultist unit from the board. The support brothers move outside of the tree and fire their heavy laser cannons into the brutes on objective number 2. Completely vaporizing 3 of the brutes. The brutes then have to make a morale test and fail, causing them to be pinned. The tree lords are able to score take no prisoners by winning combat by more than 6 wounds. They score 2 victory points. Unfortunately, the war disciples were unable to score any of their cards this turn. The tree lords receive seize objective number 2, discard hold 4, and receive seize objective number 1. The war disciples discard volley fire and receive slay the king, which they have already completed the objectives. They just can't score it till the end of the next turn. This activation of turn 3, the hunters again back up and fire into the destroyers. Destroyers take 2 wounds, dropping 1 destroyer and taking 1 down to 2 wounds remaining. With a scream of rage,
Must kill! Must kill!
the destroyers charge into the hunters that have been firing at them. They're able to cut down 2 of the hunters.
Engulf them in pain!
The lone hunter attacks back, unable to do any damage, and then proceeds to fail his morale test and runs off the board.
It is done! Don't waste my time again!
Unit of brutes that were pinned on objective number 2 recover. The fast mutated brothers are able to catch up with the destroyers in their search for blood and skulls. The bug riders continue their fight against the infernal brute. They're able to cause 2 more wounds to the brute. The brute attacks back, and with his mighty claws, he's able to rip the 2 remaining bug riders out of the sky.
So much blood! Too much to drink!
The infernal brute then activates turns and see the units of tree lord brutes on objective number 1. He turns on his flamethrowers.
Engulf them in pain!
2 of them go down in flames. They're then forced to take a morale test, which they fail, becoming pinned. The last unit of hunters on the board takes aim at the infernal brutes, trying to take its last 2 wounds off. They fire their heavy arrows, but they're only able to cause 1 wound.
I am invincible!
Support brothers activate, firing off their heavy laser cannons into the brutes on objective number 2, and are able to completely vaporize the 3 remaining brutes. Last activation for the tree men, the brutes on objective number 1 are able to recover. Last activation for the disciples, the cultists are able to stand on objective number 5. At the end of the turn, the tree men are able to score seize objective 1, and they discard area dominance. They end up drawing Seize Objective 6 and Shifting Strategy, where they roll a dice and it ends up being Objective number 3. The War Disciples score Slay the King. They then pull Hold Objective 5. They discard Seize 2 and pull Seize 3. On the last turn, trying for some kind of vengeance, the Hunters fire again at the Infernal Brute. They are able to take the final wound off of the Brute, and it explodes in a glorious fashion on Objective number 2. Mutated Brothers charge and surround the unit of Hunters that just destroyed their Infernal Brute. With their number of attacks and their mutation giving them AP +1, they're able to cut down all of the Hunters. The Brutes, on Objective number 1 being the last activation for the Tree Lords and the last Tree Lords on the board, they just hold. The Support Brothers fire their heavy laser cannons at the Brutes on Objective number 1. They are hard to see through the cover, but the Support Brothers, with their relentless rule, end up getting 5 hits and vaporizing the 3 Brutes that were standing on Objective 1. The Cultists on Objective 5 hold, and the Destroyers move on to Objective number 2. At the end of turn 4, the Tree Lords are unable to score any objectives, and the War Disciples are able to score Hold 5. Bringing the final score of the game, the Tree Lords 5 to the War Disciples 5. It ends in a tie, but with the state of the board, I think we can securely call this a War Disciples win. So that's the game, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. It was finally time that we found someone who could give the Tree Lords a fight. Even though it ended in a tie because they are tabled, we're going to move forward with the War Disciples. And with the way the poll looks this week, it looks like next week we're going to have some Orc Marauders on the board. And me being War Boss Fitz, I am looking forward to it. So that'll do it for us today in the garage. I hope you all are enjoying the content. Remember to like, subscribe, share with your friends, introduce them to the fun that is OPR gaming. Our Age of Fantasy campaign is scheduled to start on the 10th. The Discord is open, and that's going to be where you guys are going to be sharing your battles. There's also going to be the option to send it to me in an email at warbossfits@gmail.com. We're going to structure the campaign where I fight a battle, and then we're going to set up the next mission for the community to fight out. Kind of in the same vein as the old Games Workshop mail-in campaigns. So that's all I got for you guys. So until next week, hope you're having a whole lot of fun out there. Remember, don't take it too seriously. It's just a game. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.